If you're considering using Adobe Commerce, the more you know about it, the better. In this video, I'm going to define what Adobe Commerce is by breaking down its history, talking about its tech stack, laying out where Adobe is taking the platform so you know where it's going to go, and discussing the platform's general strengths and weaknesses. If you're new around here, my name is TJ Gamble and I'm the founder and CEO of Jamerson, where we've been helping accelerate businesses' e-commerce growth for over 20 years. We're also an Adobe Commerce partner, and I was lucky enough to be awarded a Magento Master Award back when Adobe Commerce was called Magento, but we'll get into that in a minute. What is Adobe Commerce? Well, according to Adobe's marketing material, Adobe Commerce is a leading open source enterprise e-commerce platform where you can build multi-channel e-commerce experiences for B2B and B2C customers on a single platform. From catalog to payment to fulfillment, our future-proof technology gives you a commerce platform that's endlessly flexible, extensible, and scalable. As a merchant that's trying to find the right e-commerce platform, was that helpful at all? Let's peel back that onion a little bit and break it down in more detail. To understand the context, let's have a brief history lesson on Adobe Commerce. Back in the mid-2000s, the e-commerce platform landscape was a hot mess. Roy Rubin and Yoav Kutner, these two guys, decided to fix this and released Magento in late August of 2007. It was designed for modularity, flexibility, but also upgradability, which were things pretty much all of its competitors at the time lacked. The platform was open source, free to download, and was met with instant success. By 2009, the platform had risen to incredible popularity, and a paid enterprise version was introduced based on the open source platform. In 2011, eBay decided to acquire Magento and immediately began development on Magento 2 to modernize the architecture of the platform. In 2015, though, eBay finally figured it'd get back to doing what it knows best and sold Magento to a private equity group right as they finally released the long-awaited Magento 2. In May of 2018, Adobe acquired Magento for $1.68 billion with a B. In early 2021, they rebranded the enterprise version of the platform to Adobe Commerce, with Magento remaining the free-to-download product. And all of that basically boils down to Adobe Commerce being the paid enterprise version of Magento, obviously with some additional premium features added. Before we get into the tech stack, consider hitting that like button and subscribing, as both help us out a lot, and drop your questions and thoughts in the comments, or feel free to contact me using the link in the description if you want to discuss it further. Also, I've created a download where I go through the 5 types of e-commerce businesses that I think Adobe Commerce is perfect for, and just as important, I include some projects that I think should avoid it. A link should pop up here, but there's also one in the description you can click once we're done. Let's talk about Adobe Commerce's architecture. As I go through this, I'm only going to touch on the high-level stuff, and I'm just going to treat you like you know what you're talking about. If these technologies don't make sense to you, then it's probably not important that you understand them. It'll only take a minute, and then we'll get into the fun businessy stuff here in just a second. Adobe Commerce's backend code is written in PHP. Of course, the default theming uses JavaScript and some libraries like Knockout.js and Require.js, and it's powered by a MySQL database. Like most platforms, you'll also need to use XML for a lot of the configuration of custom things. And because it's open source, there are some tools you'll want to get familiar with that you'll probably be using, such as Redis and Composer. Adobe has released a progressive web app front end that you can opt for instead of the traditional theming. It's built in React and uses the upward proxy server architecture and connects to the platform using GraphQL. This open source tech stack gives Adobe Commerce some very obvious strengths and weaknesses. It's also an evolving conversation with where Adobe is taking the platform. Now, I'm going to hit on these strengths and weaknesses, but it's important for you to stick around to discuss the future of Adobe Commerce so you'll understand how all of this is changing as time progresses. The primary strengths with Adobe Commerce lies with its open source architecture. It's incredibly flexible, and you can build unbelievably complex user experiences and integrations with the platform because you have access to all of the source code. Adobe Commerce has also adopted the third-party and community support from the Magento platform. Now, although the community is not as strong and passionate as it once was, it's still one of the most active e-commerce platform communities out there, and something that just about any other platform is desperate to recreate. And that means it's easier to find experienced developers, and having access to third-party tools off the shelf lowers your time to market. Adobe also has an entire suite of enterprise applications like Experience Manager that integrate with Adobe Commerce if you have that enterprise budget and you want to take your user experience up a few notches. So if you're already in or considering the broader Adobe ecosystem of applications, then Adobe Commerce definitely makes sense. The primary downside of Adobe Commerce is really the tax that comes with open source software. You're going to have to patch it and update it as new features come out and security flaws are found. There's just no way around it. It also requires more technical knowledge to develop and maintain the platform because there is an entire hosting infrastructure to consider. Let's now look to the future of Adobe Commerce. Adobe has started to accelerate the development of enterprise functionality. Things like live search and AI-powered product recommendations are really cool tools, and their PWA Studio project is developing nicely. If you ever get a chance to watch a Sneaks episode at Adobe Summit, you'll have some insight as to the types of creative engineering tasks Adobe is trying to tackle. There's no doubt that they have the ability to take the platform to the next level. However, all of these new enterprise features are being released as individual SaaS microservices. And that overcomes some of the disadvantages of open source, but SaaS has its own limitations because you don't have access to the source code. But it falls in line with the composable commerce microservices architecture that the enterprise e-commerce space is moving towards. As a result, I expect Adobe to continue to push the architecture toward a series of SaaS-based microservices all tied together with the open source Adobe Commerce platform. But we'll have to wait and see. As I mentioned before, I have a guide that outlines the 5 project types that Adobe Commerce is perfect for and a few projects that should avoid it. Here's the link that should pop up, or you can find it in the description to download that guide. Of course, contact me using the link in the description if you have questions. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you next time.